All right, man. Last but not least, we'll get to the big project everybody's been talking about. Everybody's been waiting on. Drake for all the dogs. Um, me and you didn't discuss this offline, but I'll just bring it up. And if you don't want to touch it, you don't have to. But I remember Eminem rapping. I forgot what song it was, but he mentioned that Drake one day they're gonna hate on you too. And another line he had said next to be mentioned future in the past tense. Like artists get to this place in their career. Nas went through it. A lot of artists go through it where you kind of get to the point where you've been around for so long and you've gotten so much love on projects that I mean, obviously, not everybody's gonna like everything you put out. Now, I will say this. I think this album here is a lot better than what's the album he did like a year ago? Kind of had like
Honestly, never mind.
honestly, never mind. Like I never really got into that album. Like when Kanye did 808s and Heartbreaks, the first time I heard that album, I couldn't stand it. Like I was like, what is this? Like this is horrible. And believe it or not, man, probably within like 6 months, that album became one of my favorite Kanye albums. So it grew on me. So sometimes music can grow on people over time. So with this whole thing with Drake and Joe Budden going back and forth. I know they've had issues before and they've talked and worked it out. But I mean that's what Joe does. Joe and his crew, they're gonna critique music. They're going to talk about it, and I don't know if some of the responses is worth all that. Got Birdman tweeting stuff and all that. I don't know if it's worth all that, but I mean, people just not going to like everything that you put out. My honest opinion of the album, it's not my favorite album of Drake's. I've heard other albums that I enjoy a lot more. Nothing Was the Same is my favorite Drake album, so that's my one right there. He's got other projects that I enjoy a lot. I like the EP that he did. That's one of my favorite ones as well. He's got the song on there with Lil Wayne and Bun B, Fire. So Drake makes good music and he makes hits, but sometimes just some stuff is just not going to connect with people, and that's just a part of it. But this album is decent. I mean, it's got some songs on here. It's 23 songs. I mean, for starters, it's a little on the long side. 23 records is a lot if you, especially when it's not kind of themed. It's kind of like all over the place. I mean, I understand for all the dogs is the name of the album, but I guess from the title, maybe some men kind of thought, okay, we're gonna get a rapping Drake, or it's gonna be something for the fellas, not as much singing. So maybe just the title, maybe just kind of threw some people off, maybe because of the Honestly Nevermind project. Maybe people thought they was gonna get something different. That's just my assumption. For highlights for me would be Virginia Beach, Amen featuring Teezo Touchdown. I was happy to see that because I think more people need to know about Teezo and know how special he is. So I'm a fan. So I think that's a good look for him. First Person Shooter featuring J. Cole. Another amazing verse from J. Cole, man. He's got about 6 of them of the year. Even I'm not like the biggest fan of this song, like some people are, but J. Cole definitely snapped and went crazy on here. Slime You Out featuring SZA. That song is grown on me over time. Drew Picasso. I think my favorite song on the album is What Would Pluto Do? I like that record. All the Parties featuring Chief Keef is pretty decent. 8 a.m. in Charlotte is pretty decent record. I kind of have mixed thoughts about the Rich Baby Daddy featuring Sexyy Red and SZA. I could definitely see them playing that probably like in the club. And I know that probably one of the songs that kind of stand out. And then last but not least, I think the joint with Yachty is pretty decent, Away From Home. So that's another shout out to Lil Yachty. a guy who I've never been like the biggest fan of, but he's been putting in work, man. He's been putting in a lot of work this year. I'm sorry, Another Late Night. That's the name of the song with Yachty. Yeah, Another Late Night. One more record. Away From Home is a pretty decent record too. So.
And so, before I get into my spiel, overall, like, if on a scale of 1 to 10, like, what would you rate this album, just in your opinion? And if you don't want to, you don't have to. I ain't trying to put you on the spot.
No. I say 6. I think that's being a little generous. I mean, if I went 5 and below, then that's saying it's trash. It's not trash. I'm not gonna go that far. Drake makes good music, so I'm not gonna say trash. Now, honestly, never mind. I didn't think it was trash, but it just wasn't for me. So I'm not gonna use the word trash or I don't even think we even use that term on this podcast that often to really, disrespect people's art. But I just heard better. I just heard better from him.
I feel it. Well, to start where you started with, I guess some of the reaction to the album. I listened to the actual Hold Your Budden podcast earlier today, and I heard everybody's critique on the album, and honestly, I thought that there was some fair criticism in there. Now, the tone of it might not necessarily have been liked, or may have affected how it was perceived. Right. But I thought that there was some fair criticism in there. And I don't think it's just fair criticism of Drake. I think it's fair criticism of a lot of artists. I think the older that you get as an artist, you really have to be focused. You really have to make an effort to make art with good content in it. Because, okay, like Drake is a perfect example. When Drake, first came out, he was fresh off of Degrassi. He was doing his acting thing. He signed with Lil Wayne, and all of these things. And Drake was mad young. He came out being the hit hook guy. And over time, he's grown into the artist that we see today. But I think, if Drake, being 37 years old, approaching 38, his demographic is not the same as it was 10, 15 years ago. A lot of his demographic has grown with him. And that's why I think it's important for artists as they grow and get older to make sure that they focus on having good quality content in their music, because if they don't, I think that's where they have a chance to get reviews similar to some of the reviews that we've heard about this album. But in my opinion, I think it's actually a good album. And the reason why I say good is because I think there are songs that I specifically like. There are songs that I don't think are bad songs, but they're not necessarily my cup of tea, but I don't think they're bad songs. And I think what he attempted to do was have a little something for all of the Drake fans. For the folks who like his singing, he had those tracks. For the folks who like his rapping, he had those tracks. For the folks who like the more up tempo Drake, he had those. For the folks who like the hits, he had those. So for me, and even the 8 a.m. track he had, the time location track, I think he really tried to give everybody a little bit of everything. And if that was his goal, I think he succeeded at that. So highlights for me, I got Virginia Beach, Amen featuring Teezo Touchdown. A lot of your highlights were the same as mine, but Daylight, I like that one. First person shooter, J. Cole went crazy. Bahama Promises and Try Our Best. Two of Drake's best singing songs, in my opinion. Probably since, like Fall for Your Type with Jamie Foxx, or, maybe like Let's Just Hold On, We're Coming Home, or something like that. Like, I really feel like these are two of his better singing tracks. Drew of Picasso is dope. 8 a.m. in Charlotte. BBL Love. That track's crazy to me. I like it. Rich Baby Daddy with Sexyy Red and SZA. SZA went crazy on that track. And I agree with you on Slime You Out. I'm still not crazy about the song itself, but it did sound better within the confines of the album. So for that, I can respect it. I also like What Would Pluto Do, as you said, and Away From Home. And I don't think the Yachty track is bad neither, Another Late Night. So, like you said, I think there's a lot of stuff on here. And I really think, I think people have a tendency to kind of be prisoners of the moment.
Mm.
And I really feel like a lot of people's reaction and reception to a lot of these tracks 3 to 6 months from now is going to be a lot different than what it is now, especially that Rich Baby Daddy track. Watch. That track's gonna go crazy in the club. EDM stations are gonna be picking that up and running that with their EDM mixes. That track's gonna go crazy. I'm telling you.
Yep. As far as the whole thing with Joe Budden, for example, like I told you in the past, like Joe can rap. He can rap. I mean, I have not been like the biggest fan of his music or anything, but he can rap, But do you think when you make music and I think sometimes it's not what Joe says, maybe it's like the tone that it says, that he says it, and maybe it makes the artist feel a certain way. So do you think people who make music, when they get his criticism in that tone, where they kind of take it that way, and then they kind of, well, other than pump it up, that's normally what people say back to him. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Is it like the tone that Joe is saying stuff in?
Well, honestly, I don't even think it really has anything to do with Joe or his tone. What I really think this is about is like I said, at some point you have to decide which lane you're gonna take. I think Drake early in his career decided, and we had this, semi conversation
Mm,
off the pod. I think Drake decided early in his career that he was gonna be the hit maker,
mm.
and that's who he wants to be. And I don't have no problem with that. Obviously he's done a great job at that, for years
Right,
at that
right.
point, at that. So you have to give him that. But at the same time, you can't be the hit maker forever. Like, even like some of the greatest hit makers we've seen through history have had to reinvent themselves over and over and over again
Mhm,
to maintain the popularity that they still have. So, like,
mhm,
at some point, your fans are going to challenge you
mhm,
to give them something different.
mhm,
So that's what I really think this is about. I don't think it has as much to do with Joe and what he said
mhm,
as it does with fans kind of feeling like, we've
mhm.
seen this and heard this before.
So do you guys feel like, because I've been listening to every Drake project, but do you guys feel like at his age now that he's not making something for older people, is just still being kind of catered for younger people? Like, as you mentioned, that your fan, like us, like we grew up with Nas, so he speaks for us. But do you feel like for Drake, maybe his older fans kind of feel like what's for us on the project, it just kind of seems like it's just kind of like something catered towards young people? Is that what some of his fans are kind of saying?
I think it's more of a, and we'll use Joe to you know
Mm,
make the thought more clear. I think it's more of a, okay, you want me to do this, but you did that, and look at your career.
mm,
I think it's more of one of those type of things. And that's fine. Like, I don't have no problem with nobody. At the
right.
end of the day, music is a business. The
Yeah,
goal is
absolutely.
to make money.
Right.
And now a lot of us do feel like, that creativity and art
Mm,
and all of that is highly valued or should be highly valued as well. But
right.
ultimately it's about selling records.
Yeah.
So I can't
Right.
really knock someone for choosing,
Mm,
to go the hit making route as opposed to going, with the rapidy rap or,
mm,
the hardcore hip hop route.
right.
So
Well, hey, we cover a lot of music on this podcast. We feel like there's a lot of great albums, but they don't get the attention or love that they really should get. So I understand your point. As we opened the podcast, I was talking about Wayne. How do you think another sound for Drake would be? I mean, not like the honest never mind type of thing, but just sonically. Is he kind of like doing the same thing? Maybe he needs to find some other producers to work with to kind of recreate a sound.
I think, I mean, honestly, I think Joe nailed it on the head. I think at the end of the day, it's the content. Like we know Drake, can make songs for the ladies. We know
Mhm.
Drake can make hit songs. We know
Mhm.
Drake can do time location tracks and really rap when he wants to. But
Right.
I think most of fans just want, something that shows growth in not only just him as an artist, but him
Mhm.
as a human being and as a man. I
Right.
think that's just all we really want to see. And
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's how
Mhm.
I feel about it.
Okay. I'll say this last thing. The 8 a.m. in Charlotte, it's not that I don't like the record, but it's just it sounds like something I've heard before, from him. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe working with some other producers and I think that's something sonically, that a lot of people, it's not like the rapping part for most people. That's not the problem. It's just maybe having that kind of mesh with the sonics to kind of work. That's why I kind of respect. I've always been a big fan of Nas's, and I never really kind of bought into some people knocking his beat picking ability because I like a lot of the beats that he rapped on. But the stuff he's done with Hit Boy and to really kind of have that sound, just it kind of like enhance his whole just everything, man. A guy who's been rapping for over 30 years. It's just amazing, what Nas is doing. So I think how Hit Boy was that guy for Nas, maybe some of these other guys, Wayne or Drake or people who criticize um Eminem's music or whatever, maybe some of these guys working with some other producers, could just really change a lot of it.
I mean, that could be it. And we'll talk more about this, later. But ultimately, what I wanted to say in closing is that this isn't just Drake. I think this is something that happens to every artist,
Right.
especially in the rap game as you
Mhm.
get older.
Right.
So I'm not singling out Drake when I say that. I
Right.
could name 5 or 6 people right now that are in that
Mhm.
same category as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. And then even movies, man. That's why a lot of times you see actors branch out and do other stuff. We got Jim Carrey doing The Mask and Ace Ventura and all that. And then next thing you know, he does The Truman Show and because you want to do other stuff so people don't get kind of stuck with trying to associate and limit you to just one thing. So I think the more you can diversify what you're doing, the better it could be for you.
absolutely. And I think that that's why her loss was a really great move for Drake to do that project with 21,
Yeah.
just to do something different. I think it was great.
Yeah. I agree.